Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I got my brother here, Terrence. How you doing, man?
I'm well.
Come on, man. I'm blessed. I'm blessed too. This is the Reclamation Project, where we believe in no soul left behind. We're here to provide a platform for both believers and non-believers to ask those tough questions, even when they're controversial, seemingly blasphemous, or otherwise offensive. That's because it is our mission to give answers that are rooted in science and evidence where at all possible, but most certainly objective ones that aren't based or depend on our feelings. At the end of the day, it's our hope that you'll achieve a better understanding of God, which we know improves your perception, hence also your impression of Him. After all, understanding is a difference maker and a deal breaker. And well, if you're already a believer, welcome to the opportunity of perhaps relearning some things. So we're just happy that you've joined us on this brisk Saturday afternoon in the Bay Area, California, USA. Hence the reason for the bundle, the hoodie, the extra layer.
Yes.
And so, but you know what? It's wintertime. It's Christmas time. It's the season of Jesus, as Jesus is the reason for the season. So today we're going to be talking about Jesus and his geological roots.
Amen.
In fact, let me share this with you. In a world where the echoes of ancient mysteries intertwine with the spirit of the holiday season, questions linger like whispers in the wind. Is it Bethlehem, the cradle of history? Is it Nazareth, where miracles unfolded? Or perhaps Egypt, a sanctuary in the shadows? The Bible, a tapestry of tales, weaves a cryptic narrative. Jesus, the elusive traveler of time and space. So today we've got Dr. Melbourne, who is going to unravel the enigma of Jesus' origins, exploring the threads that connect Bethlehem, Nazareth, and Egypt. And we're going to do a little something different today. He normally presents in a one-way communication, but he thought it'd be a good idea. And I love the idea that we join him because I've got questions and we've got others who have posted questions about today. Dr. Melbourne, good to have you back. It's the first of the month. Everybody knows that's your weekend. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back with you at TRP. It was a rainy day yesterday, even though it was in the 50s.
Is that right? Rain.
We had a little peak of the sun once again in the 50s. Not complaining.
See, so around this time in DC, I expect snow to be falling. Only rain was dropping. Is that normal?
Yeah. And
Is
I
that
think
normal?
1 or 2 days in the 20s so far, maybe one.
Interesting.
Not complaining.
Not complaining. I know it could be 20-something degrees and snow, digging through snow. So we've got you here today, Doc, and we're talking about the geographical roots of Jesus. You know, questions have been asked. You know, the Bible says that he's from Nazareth. The Bible says, oh no, but he's from Bethlehem. And then we know that he was in Egypt as a baby. Which one is it? We've got some confusion. So let me let you go ahead and we have a list of questions. But I'm gonna let you get started and do your opening because you may answer some of those questions already in your opening. So talk to us.
All right, let me begin by saying good evening to everyone and Merry Christmas to you when it comes. Enjoy the season. Don't spend too much. Make sure you spend most of your not your money but your time with God.
Yes.
Expressing gratitude for sending Jesus to die for us.
Yes.
But what I term in my lectures to my students as Christological geography. Christological geography has been plaguing people for a long time. So the question becomes, where is Messiah from? Where is Jesus from? And yes, the prophets had said, Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. But we have an interesting situation. In Matthew chapter 1,
Okay.
Matthew begins to talk about Jesus and the ancestry of Jesus. And as a good Jew, he roots Jesus in the geographic area
Okay.
of Palestine that the folks were expecting him to be at. He gave him the genealogical records that he was supposed to have. One, he is a descendant of Abraham, who is the father of the Jewish nation.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a descendant of David, who is the second king of united Israel, and the king that the people look back for or look back to with nostalgia.
Got it.
And so he suggests that, yes, Jesus was born in Bethlehem. He says that. And then he says that after a while, uh, Jesus went to Egypt
Mhm.
to fulfill the prophecy, out of Egypt have I called my son.
All right. I see you building the chronology already. So Matthew is saying that he was born in Bethlehem, but in order to fulfill prophecy, it was a must. He had to travel to Egypt very early on.
Egypt, and then after Egypt, he goes back. He says he grew up in Nazareth.
Mm.
So here comes Luke, and Luke suggests that actually Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. It's, while the shepherds were out in the field, and the shepherds went to see him that night.
Mm-hmm.
And then, while Luke does not mention anything about the wise men or the escape into Egypt, he says Messiah is from Bethlehem. And then he goes to Nazareth, where he is brought up. Mark doesn't mention anything about where Messiah is from or those things. But what is interesting is that John comes along and he sees Bethlehem, he sees Egypt, growing up in Nazareth, and he says, look, all that is good, but it is more than that. So he says, in beginning was God. In beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made by him, and without him, not one thing was made which was made. So he
John is
says
taking a different.
his own, verse 11, I'm sorry, verse 8, he came to his own, you know, and 9, he came to his, and 10, his own thing, the world he made. 11, his own people didn't receive him.
Right.
But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become sons of men. And when you look what he says in verses 1 to 3, and what he says up there in verses 9 through, let's say, 14, what he's saying is that Messiah is from heaven.
Okay.
Who's right?
Good question. Well, I believe I know the answer to that question, but it is a good question to ask because you're right. John seems to be taking a different approach. Why is that? He's saying he's taking the approach about this question. John seems to be saying of where Jesus is from. It's not of this world. Forget Bethlehem. Forget Egypt. You know, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with. He goes on to posit,
Right.
and then he ends up. You know, he's saying Jesus is from out of this world.
But couldn't it also be that John is suggesting that an earthly genealogy isn't quite as important as what he is, who he is on earth is not as important as who he has always been, in the sense that we as human beings, what I'm trying to say is we want to identify and claim, make a claim. Oh, Jesus was from Libya. Oh, Jesus was from Boston. Oh, Jesus was from somewhere, so we can stake a claim to him. Kind of the same way that we do with our champions and versus various sports and whatnot, what have you. You know, we're here in Silicon Valley, so you know a lot of people, they don't probably haven't even traveled to Boston before, or to Foxborough for that matter. But because Tom Brady played there and he's from San Mateo, that's their God. They want to claim him. And so, in the same likeness, men and women want to stake claim to wherever Christ is here on planet Earth. So, again, if Christ had been from Bakersfield, then all of Bakersfield would be like, man, Christ is one of
He's
our own.
ours.
That's
He's
my
ours.
guy, my guy. You know.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
maybe possibly that could also be a position that John was taking on this, to make sure that folks don't get caught up in all the hoopla of all of this, because to say that Christ is from heaven, which is true, to say that Christ is from heaven, it still leaves access for all of us to him.
Yeah, but I
What
think
do you say, Doc? What do you say to that?
yeah. Not only is he saying those stake a claim there, he says if you are just looking at his descent or his birth in Bethlehem and his nurture in Nazareth and Egypt, then your view is limited. Broaden your scope, widen your vision. Before he existed on earth, he had a prior existence.
Amen.
And I think John 1 in now here's a fascinating one. Let me ask you, Terence, this is for you. Which is which is older, Genesis 1:1 or John 1:1?
Ah.
Well, well, the verse. Okay, I'm gonna be technical. The verse certainly Genesis 1:1 is older, but the saying, the message.
I would say the saying is pretty much one and the same.
All right, both of you are wrong. John 1:1 is older than Genesis 1:1.
Really?
Yeah, Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning, God made the heaven and the earth." The beginning. That's a specific beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of our earth, our solar system, our universe.
Yes.
The translation of the King James and some of the other versions that says in John 1:1, "In the beginning was the word," is wrong. The Greek does not have a definite article
Okay.
before beginning.
Okay.
And the definite article points out identity. So if the article is there, then it's referring to a specific beginning, like the article in Genesis 1:1 refers to a specific beginning. The fact that there's no article here says it's not looking at a specific beginning, but at the quality of beginning. And so what John 1 is saying is that whenever there was a beginning, so it's going beyond Genesis 1:1 and it's going to the beginning of beginnings. Whenever there was a beginning, God was there and the word was there with him, which suggests that the word co-existed with God from the beginning.
Come on.
Let me give you let me give you let me give you Melbourne's translation of John 1:1-3. You know, in beginning was the word, and the word was face to face with God.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Yeah, that's a different outlook there. That's a different look.
Yeah, and it goes deeper than that. It says that he was there, and without him, not one thing came into being, which came into being.
Man.
Talk about making it clear who's the creator,
Yeah.
the author.
So
Wow, that's awesome.
he was there with God. And not only was he there with God, he is responsible for everything that was made. And let me share something with John 1 here with our audience and with you that most people miss.
Come on.
In John 1:5, I think it was, or is it 4? There was a man who was sent from God,
Okay.
and his name was John. And he came to bear witness concerning the light. And then the author of John says he was not that light, but he came to bear witness concerning the light. What is he talking about? What's going on there?
Which verse is
During
this?
the
So he's
intertestament.
at verses 1:6
Mhm.
through 1:8. Well, actually 1:9.
Yeah. So during the intertestamental period, that period after Malachi and before Matthew, there came a belief in two messiahs among the messianic beliefs. And it said that one messiah would be from the tribe of Judah, kingly. The other messiah would be from the tribe of Levi, priestly. Now, John the Baptist is from the tribe of Levi. Jesus is from the tribe of Judah. So what was happening there is that some of the people were taking sides, and some people were seeing Jesus as Messiah, is the kingly Messiah. And some were seeing John the Baptist as the Messiah. He is the priestly Messiah. So John, the author of the first gospel, says that John the Baptist was not that light.
Got it.
Meaning that he is not the Messiah. But he came to bear witness concerning the light, which means that he was the forerunner to bear witness, to prepare the way for the coming of Jesus. So let me go to Matthew now, and you find this in Luke. So what was happening after Jesus began his ministry? The disciples of John the Baptist, who thought that Jesus was supplanting John the Baptist, went to complain to him. The guy you baptized by the Jordan is also baptizing, and he's making more disciples than you. And I think this is in John. John the Baptist says, he must increase while I must decrease. In other words, he is the Messiah. I am not the one.
Got it.
You need to get that. But then John, so that at one point, John began even to question. So that's why he sent his disciples to Jesus to say, are you really that one, or am I to look for another? And perhaps he went into prison. He and they expected that Jesus would have miraculously released him. So what Jesus did, when they went to him, Jesus didn't answer the questions they asked. He just went about, he just ignored them, went about his doing, healing the sick, giving sight to the blind, hearing to the deaf, and so on. And at the end of the day, he says, go tell John what you have seen. And so what he did was he did his action so that John would see that he was fulfilling the messianic expectations.
Got it.
But it emphasized the polemic that was going on. The author has that polemic, so that people would see that John was not the Messiah, but John was the one that prepared the way for the Messiah.
For the Messiah, right. You know, this is I just want to take a quick Sidebar for those who might be English language challenged, when you hear the word definite article versus indefinite article, I'll just give you a quick analogy. If you were going to share with a friend, hey, you know, at this cookie shop, this bakery, you know, there are going to be lots of cookies to get. But the one that you should get is this one. And so if you were to go there and they would point it out, they would say, okay, this is a good cookie.
Mhm.
A is an indefinite article.
Mm-hmm.
But
This
if
is
they would, if
the
they would,
cookie.
yeah, if they continue on and say, but this is the cookie, this is the cookie that you ought to get, that's the or the
Mhm.
is a definite
Definite.
article.
Mhm.
And it places emphasis. I mean, you know, I won't go too deep on all that's entailed in the word the or a definite article, but just so you know, in simplistic terms, it has emphasis. It's unique. It stands out. It's not like a cookie.
Right.
It's the cookie.
The, yeah.
So when Doc was talking about, you know, hey, you know, there was emphasis placed on a definite article was placed. You know, that's to understand the difference between a and the. So,
Thank you for that, Stan. You know, I when I was growing up, grammar was taught,
hmm.
and I often miss the point that they don't teach grammar now. They say grammar is caught, not taught.
Is that right? I guess I missed
Yeah,
that.
they
Are you kidding me?
say grammar is caught, not taught. So when I have students coming to my Greek classes,
Mhm.
I have to be teaching English in
Are
addition
you
to Greek. Yeah,
you have double duty? Are you kidding
for
me?
them to
Because
be able to understand Greek.
But
well, I definitely understand that has to be.
Mhm.
Well, for me, I don't understand how you can learn any foreign language, particularly Greek, without having, if not a mastery, you've got to really have you got to have a nice handle of how to use English.
That's correct.
But you're teaching both. You got to teach both English. If they're coming in there and they don't have an understanding of definite versus indefinite,
They
But
don't
I'm
even
surprised.
know what a participle is sometimes.
right.
mm,
I'm surprised that
Wow.
you're surprised. All you have to do is look at a text message with a person that's half your age. That's all you have to do is look at a text message, communication between you and that person, and you will see
mm,
a definite difference in the syntax and punctuation
uh,
and flow of your sentence versus their own. They're gonna short everything.
oh my
You're
goodness.
gonna need one of your kids to decipher it for you.
That's right. Sometimes I have to ask
Yeah.
for translation.
Yes, Lord help these younger generations. Doc, a question came in. Oh, wait, you got something?
I did have a question,
Come on.
but
You go first.
you know, Doc, this one, even as a Christian, it's always I've pondered this one, and I've never known quite who could answer this for me. So you seem just like the right person. This seems like the right time. Now, the Bible teaches that for one, we're talking about Christ right now, so it's appropriate to ask it on the basis of just that alone. So we have Mary and Joseph who go into Egypt. We have many of our brothers from antiquity in the Bible that went into Egypt as a place of refuge. Why is it, and even how is it that this Egypt can be a place of refuge as well as a house of slavery at the same time?
Okay, that's an interesting question. And let me answer it this way. Let's look at it this way. There seems to be, for me, a fascination between God's sons
Mm-hmm.
and Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Abraham found
Yeah.
refuge in a time of famine in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
His son,
Mm-hmm.
all right, Isaac, found refuge in Egypt
Mm-hmm.
at a time of famine. Joseph,
Mhm.
Jacob's son, is nurtured, and he finds refuge from his own brothers in Egypt.
Mhm.
And when there's the famine in Palestine, Israel, that is Jacob, and the entire family comes to Egypt.
Mhm.
So Israel comes to Egypt for refuge. And then God's greater son, Jesus, finds refuge in Egypt. There's something between God, God's son, and Egypt.
Yeah, that's a good highlight.
Okay? There are a couple negative things about Egypt, though, even though that is true.
Mhm.
One is that Israel is enslaved in Egypt. Why? A couple things. One, there came a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph,
Right.
which means that I like to say it in the academic arena this way. Whenever it gets to a point that we have no one who has institutional memory,
Mm.
then the unit, the school, whatever it is in danger. It becomes problematic. There has got to be institutional memory. So what that says, the institutional memory was forgotten. And the liberation that was brought to Egypt by Joseph was forgotten. And this new Pharaoh who came on the scene noticed how the children of Israel were multiplying. And they were now becoming afraid of them because they figured if they grew so strong and so fast, then they may join with an enemy to fight against us, or they may overcome us to take over the throne. So they began to enslave them. So actually, it short-sightedness, lack of institutional memory, jealousy, and fear.
Doc, real quick, just break down for our viewers who may be grappling with institutional memory. Just can you give them a quick example or breakdown?
The idea is that we have to remember what is happening. You know, who are the ones who have ruled? Who are the ones who have made a contribution? You need somebody there who will remember the people in the community who have been supportive of the institution, who give regularly, who you can call on to solve a problem. So it's not just in terms of generosity, but who are the people you would call to fix a water leak? Who would you call to do this? You know, these little things.
Doc, would you say that textbooks in American school systems are a sort of institutional memory, and particularly with regard to the history and the plight of Black people in America? But you say whether it's not. I'm just asking.
I would say institutional memory. That is now you're getting into the arena of history itself. If a people does not know its history, then it cannot learn from it. And if it is not able to learn from history, it's going to repeat the mistakes of history. So there is a slight difference.
Okay, go. All right.
The institutional memory may be limited to one institution. So, for example, I'm at Howard, institutional memory at Howard. I'm in the School of Divinity, institutional memory in the School of Divinity.
Got it.
While the historical things we are talking about would maybe broader, you see. And what is happening in this country today is that, yes, some people are forgetting institutional memory, but some people are deliberately trying to wipe out history, to rewrite history, to recreate history.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for
Got it.
whatever their purposes may be, and,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a good thing.
Got it. Okay. I think everybody will have clarity on that one. It's more singled out. It's to an institution, an agency. It's their memory, their ability to recall things that have happened and what they've written down.
And what is going to be good for that particular institution at any particular point in time. So Terrence, you have these people. Then Egypt became a place of refuge for Israel. But once the people forgot, then the enslavement took place. So what was a good thing, what began as a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
became something else.
Yes.
I see that, Doc Melbourne. I guess where I failed at is the other part of the question is why then is it particularly in Christianity that we continue to make reference to Egypt as the house of slavery? It's as though redemption has been available to all else except for Egypt.
Well, there are two things there. Number one, um, we have to remember slavery in order to learn from that. So God told the children of Israel to teach that history to their children
Okay.
so that they will know. So on the one hand, we need to know that.
Passover.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the Passover. But on the other hand, yeah, there's also what you're talking about, the redemptive aspect of it, the liberative aspect of it. But what makes it bad, and why you find that a lot of our people are using it, is that there was a group of people that wanted to do slavery and not recognizing that some aspects of biblical slavery might not be the same as slavery as we had in the 16th century. But be that as it may, there are some people who, in order to, in their own minds, justify the kind of slavery that was practiced in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, use the Bible to reinforce it.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
because that was done, then our people have to remember Egypt, because it was God who delivered Israel from Egypt. The redemption came from Egypt, the exodus out of Egypt. So our people remember it to say, just like Israel had an exodus and they were liberated, God is going to liberate us too.
Mm, mm, mm.
So it's a point of memory. It's a point of reassurance. It's a point that will give us hope, because what God did for them, God will do for us too.
Nice.
And I understand that. I'm gonna finish off with this. I know we have other questions. I would only add that seems to me that comes at the expense, which I absolutely agree. We should not forget the Exodus. We should not ever forget any act of God, for that matter. But
Mhm.
we definitely shouldn't forget how ancient Israel was enslaved in Egypt. But it sounds as though it comes at the expense of forgetting the refuge that ancient Egypt offered to Israel in her past, in times of antiquity as well.
Yeah, there are some of our people who don't remember that aspect of it.
Hmm.
But there's another side to that. Three great religions were born in Palestine:
Mm.
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Islam.
Islam being the youngest.
Hmm.
And what has happened too is that um, the relations between Christianity and Islam, and Judaism and Islam, again, have not been great. You see, and so when there are the clashes, then that memory becomes strong once again.
Gotcha.
So that is part of what the reinforcing element is. And I'm not going to be shy about mentioning the fact that the modus operandi, the manner of operation of some of those individuals who have colonized and enslaved others has been to divide and conquer.
This is true.
So, as you can, they can drive wedges between Christians and Muslims, and Muslims and Christians, and so forth. Then their purposes would be achieved, and that was what they did. And so it is very difficult for some of that to be overcome now, because some of us are trying to do it in our own strength, not relying on God. But this thing has been entrenched so much. So I'll give you a classic example. At any time, at the Almina dungeon in Ghana, or any one of them, there were more blacks inside and outside than there were whites, Europeans. But because they made the slaves who worked in the house feel better than the slaves who work outside, and feel better than the people who were outside, and while they made the people outside feel better than the ones inside, then they could withstand, they could reign.
Got it. Yeah.
And so if you look among us today, that those divisions that were created and that were born during that time still exist. So, even some of the tribes, the Igbos and the whatever, don't get along with another tribe.
Still at play. Still at play.
It's still there. And in our country today, when West Indians come here, they make us feel that we're better than African Americans. To keep the wedge. So as long as they can divide us and have us fight against each other, then we won't unite to be able to achieve what we're able to do.
Man, that's powerful. That deserves a whole conversation by itself. I have a Bible study. I have 2 Bible studies I conduct on Tuesday nights with people all around the country, and one of the members asked a question. She was interested in knowing what was life like for Jesus growing up, in his early life. So you've already established now, I think it should be clear probably to most, that he was born in Bethlehem, had a bit of an extended vacation in Egypt, and grew up in Nazareth. But what would life have been like for Jesus growing up?
That's an interesting question, because we call the years after his return from Jerusalem, when he was 12, to the time when he appeared in the wilderness, we call that the silent years. Because the Bible, as we know it, does not give any details as to what happened during that time. What we know happened during that time is that he was subject to his parents. He was obedient to his parents. Now, before I go and speculate, I'm going to speculate, but before I do, there are what we call the apocryphal gospels, like the Gospel of Peter or the Gospel of Thomas, or there are some gospels like that, apocryphal works. And there are some stories in there. One of the stories said that Jesus used to like to go out and uh, with mud pies, he'd use mud to make birds, for example. They said one day he went out and he made birds, and after he made the birds, he clapped his hands and said, "Off ye!" and the birds flew away.
That's crazy.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
That's one story. Another one said that one day there was a stream, and he built a bridge across the stream, and one of his peers broke it down. He built the bridge again. The guy broke it down, and he looked at the guy, and the guy fell over dead.
Man.
Man, which book was this? For our viewers, if they've been tuning in long enough, then they will have gotten an introduction to some apocryphal books, and they should understand that they're not canonical. They're not on the same. They're good. They have value for history and some of
and
that
culture.
Yes, in culture.
But not for doctrine and theology, right?
Yeah. But that's an interesting one right there. I don't think I've read that one. I've read the Apocrypha, not all of the books in their entirety.
That one is there. So the guys got terrified, and they went to call their parents, and Mary spoke to Jesus, and he did a miracle, and the guy came back to life.
Oh my goodness! Wow, look at that.
No, having said that, I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying.
I know, I get it.
This is what's there. However, have you ever thought about this one? At the wedding of Cana of Galilee.
Yes.
When the wine ran out, and Mary went to Jesus and say, "They have no wine." What was the basis of her going? And when Jesus said, "What is that to me and to you, woman? My time has not yet come." Mary turns to the servants and said, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Was that based on nothing? Did she see something in his growing up days upon which she could have based that firm confidence with which she spoke to the servants? We don't know.
I have not thought about that either. Now, while I do understand very clearly that Mary knew who she was carrying, she eventually came to understand exactly who she was carrying. It would make sense to me that at some point before his ministry began, that Jesus had to give a little sample and show her, and so by the time we get to the wedding of Cana, she already knows, hey, he can do whatever he wants to. My son he's the creator of the universe. He can do whatever he wants to. So y'all, I'm tempted to tell you, but I can't. Just do what he says. Just do what he says.
Just do what he says. So that gives us a little glimpse, But what we do know is that for those 18 years, the Bible says he was subject to his parents. He was obedient to his parents. And then Luke 2:52 says he increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man, which means that he increased mentally, physically, spiritually, and socially. Which means that his developmental tasks went in the way it should be, and he was not behind in anything. We also get a glimpse of his intellectual acumen with his discussions at 12 with the lawyers and the doctors in the temple.
Right.
They could not withstand his teaching. They couldn't answer his questions, and they had to admit that he was not one of their rabbinic students. So
Mhm.
those those give us a little glimpse of what things are like. And for those of you who are accustomed or you're aware of Ellen White and the book Desire of Ages that looks at the life of Jesus, she mentions there that singing and music was something that he was engaged in. He read the
Mm.
scriptures and he was involved in singing and in music.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's fascinating. So to the one who asked that question, you know, and I'm sure others have had that question as well that they wanted answered. The Bible doesn't give us a lot of details on what was going on before 12. But Doc, I guess I would ask a follow-up of you based on everything that you have learned about the Palestinian area during that time, culturally. What could you have expected to see, you know, kids engaging in? So we get a little bit of a glimpse with the whole mud pie um, scene. So, you know, and we can sort of imagine that. That's just kids are kids.
Right,
I don't care what
right.
era, what point in time you choose. Kids are kids, and dirt and
Yeah.
using their hands, all of that.
Yeah.
That's normal, a normal inclination. Um, Anything else that you could have expected?
Yeah, thanks for that question, because there was something else that I had planned to say that got carried away, I didn't say, which is that Joseph is a carpenter.
Mhm.
So Joseph dealt with wood. So I'm sure Jesus would have to, from time to time, help Joseph with the wood, whether the cutting of the
Mhm.
wood, the lifting of the wood, and so on. So
Mhm.
he would be physically fit with that
Okay.
kind of
Mhm.
exposure, you know. Um,
Mhm.
I think one of the things I saw outside of Nazareth was an area where there's a spring water bubbling up or that, and they were saying that that's where Jesus would have gone to fetch water for the family. So you would get the idea that, you know, he would be carrying water in order for his mother to be able to have water to use and so on.
So
Strong
you
like
know,
that.
hey, so you know, this brings me to another question, Doc. So the question I'm going to ask you, I'll ask the question first, and then I'm going to give a little bit more. The question is, do you like the portrayals of Jesus physically that you see today? Because when you point out that his father was a carpenter and growing up from an early age, he likely participated for as much as he could.
Mhm.
At 2, he can only do so much. Give me that little block, Jesus. All right. At 5, he can do more. Okay, go get that longer block of wood over there.
Mhm.
Bring that
Mhm.
to me, Jesus. So you know that's what a father does. Teaches their
Right.
child how to you know, in the ways in which whatever industry that he's
Right.
in.
Right. Right.
So when I think of someone who's that physical, who's you know, he's a blue collar worker.
Mhm.
He's not a tax collector. He's not lifting you know, he's not calculating and writing things down. He's
Mhm.
using his physique to do work all of his life. I'm seeing someone different than what I see portrayed on television. One other thing I was going to say, because when you mentioned that he went to the well, you know, the well that he mentioned in that story
Mhm.
right there, that immediately reminded me. About 5 years ago, I participated in a sort of like an Ironman competition. It's called what is it called? They're like the Trojans, not the Trojans. Oh my goodness.
Spartan.
Spartan. Thank you. There's a competition in America for our watchers who are outside of America. It's called Spartan, race and competition. And there are these grueling activities you have to participate in. I
Yeah.
did it one year and I survived it. It was rough. One
Yeah.
of the ones that was
There is just challenge him to do it again.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! I had to do some preparing before I would even attempt that.
Okay.
But one of the activities that we had to accomplish was carrying some buckets of rocks, two of them tied to ropes, then tied to a crossbar that we had around our necks. Now, we didn't do water because water might have easily dropped. The rocks stayed in there where you didn't lose any rocks. But we had to carry this thing about a quarter of a mile.
Ooh.
And I'm thinking, not a quarter of a mile, maybe like maybe more than 1,000 feet. So just under a quarter of a mile.
Okay.
Up a hill, down a hill with a nice grade. And it made me think about carrying water back in the day. Listen, I'm struggling to do this one time for this event to try to get this medal at the end. But to think that people had to do this on a regular basis, I can't imagine Jesus being a little flimsy.
No, he's not the mama's boy, the softy that is often portrayed to be. He's not.
Come on, break it down, Doc. So what do you say? Do you like those portrayals? When you look at those, what do you say to those portrayals of a flimsy Jesus?
I know it's Hollywood.
Hollywood.
I don't give it a second thought. I don't give it a second thought.
Hollywood. That says it all.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up carrying water. I grew up carrying wood and carrying mangoes on my head and those things. So I know what it is. It was, it would not be that kind of person that they portray. And let me mention one thing else. We know that a Jewish boy grew up with scripture, and that by the age, is it the age of 5? Is it 4 or 5? He had to be able to commit the book of Leviticus to memory.
I think that's 5.
Yeah,
I think it's 5. Yeah.
Yeah, the book of Leviticus to memory.
Yes.
So we know that as well. So he would have grown up with that. So then by the age of 12, he would take on the whole yoke of the Torah. So when he went to Jerusalem at age 12, the reason he went was to prepare for bar mitzvah when you'd become a son of the law the following year. And, you know, they allowed you to come a year before to see what was going on so you would be prepared for it. So once again, that gives us a little more glimpse of what.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. I know that this will be very helpful to her in this answer. That gives us a glimpse, you know, playing with mud pies, you know, a kid who was physically fit, not flimsy and out of shape, you know, and a kid who had to memorize a whole book, a whole scroll.
We often make him so pious that he's almost not even human in that respect. Like, and the Bible does teach against that in the sense of he faced everything that we face. He was the little kid that had to make a decision between, oh, do I go and steal that piece of candy or do I do what my mother and father taught me? You know what I mean? He was faced even with the smallest temptations. But the two of you brought out something. And it really made me think about how much further it goes in terms of his intellect, how much further it goes than just the fact that his father was a carpenter and that his father would have taught him his vocation. Because when you think about, and Stan, you know this because your background is in engineering, but when you think about being a carpenter is nothing short of being an engineer. Fact is, he's a structural engineer, if nothing less, right? Yeah. And so when you think about that, it went from the worldly application of that to the spiritual application of that, because then, you know, Christ goes into the structural engineer of just humankind itself, right? And dealing with mankind on that level. And so one thing lends itself to the next. And so, you know, it just it checks all the boxes, should I say, for me in terms of Christ.
And I can add to that, you know, that each Jewish boy had to learn a trade.
Now that I didn't know.
Yeah, each Jewish boy had to learn a trade. So Jesus then living with a carpenter, it's natural that he would learn his father's trade.
Okay. Okay.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So how does that work when you're born to a Levite?
I think it works across the board, because if you look at Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin, and his trade that he learned was tent making.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we do have some other questions that
We got time for maybe one or two more quick
okay.
ones.
I'll hit Doc Melbourne with the one that I thought man just really needs answering. And it's number one. It says the person is asking, is it true that Jesus was not born in BC 4? If he was not, when was he born, and where did the date BC 4 come from?
That's a good question. Let me put it this way: that it was said the rabbis expected Jesus to have come in the 4th quarter of the 1st century, and that's when he came. But we were coming backwards, right? We're coming down backwards, and the dates were arranged by a Catholic priest who did the calculations from the founding of Rome, which was 756 AUC, right? And then that was correlated to become BC 4, which therefore means that here's something that folks never usually think of. In there's not really a BC 3 to 1. BC 4 becomes 81. Okay, in the year of our Lord. That's something we don't normally think about, but that's it. Now, the BC 4 then becomes the year when he was born, because we know Herod died in BC 4. And if Herod had the decree to kill all the children in order to get rid of Jesus, then Jesus had to have been born before Herod died. Now, by that same token, if Herod died in BC 4, right, and Jesus was born before he died, and Herod killed all the children 2 years and younger,
yes,
then it means it could not have been BC 4. He had to have been born before that. Because the 2-year-olds and the 1-year-olds were killed. So some scholars choose the date BC 6. Some scholars choose the year BC 5. I happen to be one of those who believe it might be BC 5.
Nice.
Right. So it is correlated with the death of Herod, in the sense that Herod was born before Herod died, after he was born. In other words, Jesus was born before Herod died.
Right, because we're coming down.
Because we're coming down.
Right.
Yeah. So if he killed all the children 2 years and younger, then it had to have been between BC 6 and BC 4, not necessarily BC 4.
Nice. That's a good one. That's a good one.
And by the way, historically, the picture of Herod the Great that we find in the Bible is correct.
Really?
Yeah, the guy was a despot, and he was jealous. There's a Greek saying that it was better to be Herod's hun than his huyun. Hun means pig. Huyun means son. It was safer to be his pig than his
Man.
son, because he killed his sons. But because he was a nominal Jew, he would have nothing to do with pork. You would survive as a king.
Man. Oh man.
Man,
So he
oh,
killed
man.
some of his sons, and his favorite wife, Mariamne. He feared that she was plotting against him, and so he hired a man to kill her, which the guy did. And he loved her so much and missed her so much after she died. He was so mad, he killed the guy who killed her, that he hired to kill her. And then, because he knew the people hated him so much, he figured that the people would be happy when he died. So he left a decree that on his death, 180 leading Pharisees should be killed. So at least there would be some mourning at his death.
Today we call that a psychopath.
That's the kind of guy he was.
That man was crazy.
Wow,
That
this
man was
dude.
crazy.
This dude. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, today we call that a psychopath, man.
Man.
Wow.
Last question. I'll take you out. That's crazy. I'm gonna have to. Yeah. That one's got me messed up for a little bit longer beyond the broadcast. Last question I'll leave you with is one that has missiled people for a long time, and that is, will you elaborate on the point at which the wise men come? You know, we see in stories that are that are portrayed, that are, when we see plays on the story of Jesus, we see the wise men coming to see a baby Jesus. But is that what the Bible says? Is that the message the Bible gives?
So the question is, did the shepherds and the wise men get there on the same night?
Yes. That's an alternative way of asking the question.
Yeah. I think if we look at it carefully, you'll notice that it says in Luke 2 that the shepherds went and they saw the child, and they saw the Mary, the mother, and Joseph, and they saw them in the stable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When the Magi came, where did they go?
Which verse was this?
And the interesting thing is that Luke 2, you read verse 12, verse 21 or 22.
Mm-hmm.
And
he preached on this.
When you look at when the wise men, for example, and by the way, were there 3 wise men? How do you know there are 3 wise men?
Yes, they were more than that.
We don't know. I think we say there are 3 wise men because there were 3 gifts.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But how do we know that
that the number was 3?
Yeah, how do we know that?
Yeah.
Scroll down beyond verse 15. And they hurried and located Mary and Joseph and found the babe. Notice that. Verse 17, they found the babe lying in a manger. Verse 16, sorry. All right, notice that. The shepherds saw the babe. But if you look at Matthew 2, and I think it's verse 14.
Oh, he said Matthew 2:14?
14, yeah. And you'll see there that it says that he got up and took the child and his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Not the babe, but the what?
The child.
And his mother. There's one other thing which said that you will notice in Luke that the wise men went to the manger, which would have been the cave.
So that was BC 5.
Yeah, yeah, and then in Matthew 2:9 it says, when they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them till it came and stood over where, notice who?
The child.
The child
Yeah.
Young child
Yeah.
was.
Mm-hmm.
And verse 11, and when they had come into what?
The
The
house.
house.
In the
Not the-
house. So now
Right.
while in Luke 2 they were in the cave.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now they are in a what? A house.
And they also saw the child.
And they saw the child. And those would be different words in the Greek.
And
So-
to your other point, through and through, they never mention a number in terms of how many of them it was.
Right, there's not. And so we find then so that there is some development in the child by this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Melbourne, do we know the origin of that? Like where we got that number from? The 3 wise men?
No, I just said that I think it's because there were 3 gifts. They assumed that each one brought a gift.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Gold, frankincense,
Yeah, that
and myrrh.
makes sense.
And myrrh, yeah. And so while I'm there too, we could ask, I mean, Jesus, I could say, Jesus, the coat that he owned was gifted. He never owned property, never owned a house. What then became of the gold?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And he was buried in a borrowed tomb. Did Mary and Joseph use the gold to set up their business, and therefore Jesus didn't benefit from it? I believe that what happened is they got that for their sustenance while they were in Egypt, for the trip to Egypt, for life in Egypt while they were in Egypt, and for the journey back home.
Right.
Travel expenses.
Right. And there's nothing negative about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nothing.
And even if there was some left over that they used to take care of the child, that's fine.
Got it. Man, that's a good take right there. Doc,
this wasn't enough time for me.
Yeah, I know. That seems to be the story of our lives. We just need more time, but this has been good. I believe that anyone listening, the viewer listening, has gleaned quite a bit of insight into into the dilemma of is it Egypt, Nazareth, or Bethlehem? Where did he come from? Where was he born? So he spent some time growing up in all of those.
One last thing here.
Yes.
No, the blue-eyed Jesus that they
Yes.
portray. If Egypt is actually a country where blacks live, as is normally the case, we know that.
Mm-hmm.
How could a blue-eyed Jesus hide in Egypt?
Right. Right.
It's not possible.
Yeah. Not hide.
Right? And it has to be hiding, because if he's in Egypt, because of the proximity, word would have gotten back to Herod where they were.
That we found them.
So they have to be able to blend in and not be detected.
Right.
And that would not have been possible. So that's part of, and if you ever notice, if you have ever been to Egypt, or you know someone who have been to Egypt, and you go to the Valley of the Kings and you see all the pharaohs with their noses broken off.
Yes.
And the story I was told was that the pharaohs ruled so ruthlessly that when they found them, they broke off their noses, which means that all of them, there was not even one good one.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
But that does make sense. But what we know is when the Europeans got there and saw the kings and their portrait, in the pyramids and stuff, and they discovered that the noses were flat,
Right. That didn't fit the narrative.
which means that they were not Caucasoid.
Mm-hmm.
There had to be something else. They broke off the nose so people would know.
Would hide it. Man, didn't fit the narrative.
That's
Wow.
right. That's right. That's right.
The truth is always setting you free. I don't care whatever what type of truth it is. Truth is always setting people free.
Yeah.
Man, this has just been priceless and valuable. Dr. Melbourne, appreciate you coming on and making it a two-way conversation this month. And we're looking forward to next year.
Yes.
Man, it'll be 2024 before you come back.
God willing, yes indeed.
Yep. Second, that first Sabbath in January. Yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage more of this whenever and wherever possible. I'm game. This is great, man.
Yeah, because it's a little bit different in the moment. When he's talking, questions come up as he's speaking, and that sort of makes the feeling a little bit different. So we're gonna let you get back to your afternoon or evening where you are activities. And I smell lunch where I am, and
Okay. And I say Merry Christmas to everybody at that end of the season.
We'll do.
Yes, Merry Christmas, Doc.
Okay.
And so we just appreciate you, and for the viewers, thank you for tuning in today to the Reclamation Project. And if you have any follow-up questions, please put those in the thread, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. We'll get them to Dr. Melbourne so he can get you your answers. Until then, be blessed, and we will see you. We'll see you on Tuesday for another episode of Reclaiming Your Health with Chef CC Payan. So be blessed, everyone. We'll see you next time.